Welcome to Nineworks TV and to exquisite GT3s in the 991.2 Clubsport and 992 Touring. We've covered these outstanding 911s on this channel before, but today we're focusing specifically on their revered 6-speed manual gearboxes, as we ask, which is better? So here's the thing, the gearbox in the 991 and the 992 GT3, manual that is, they're exactly the same ratios and everything. I've even dived into the weight, and whilst I can't find the weight of the gearbox on its own, I know that the difference with the 991 generation in manual to PDK overall was 17 kilos. For the 992 generation, exactly the same again, although the 992 has put on 5 kilos in overall mass, the gap in weight between manual and PDK is the same. It's still 17 kilos lighter for the manual gearbox. So as I say, it is carried over from one to the other. It's Porsche Motorsport's very own gearbox. It's 6-speed, mated of course to that naturally aspirated 4-litre screamer of a flat 6, both revving out to 9,000 RPM, don't forget. The power on the 991 is 500, the power on the 992 upticks slightly to 510, and again, a tiny uptick in torque as well. If there's going to be any material differences from 991 to 992, and I'm sure there is because Porsche is all about quiet evolution, it's going to be in things like how that feels, I suppose, from the driver's seat. As I've mentioned elsewhere in this video, I've covered the brilliance of this car before. I mean, what an absolute engineering marvel the GT3 is in both specifications, 991 and 992. So I'm not going to be diving into that too much here. What we are looking at is exclusively at the shifter, at the 6-speed gearbox. It's rightly revered among enthusiasts. Again, as an engineering work of art, the very fact that Porsche has devised a manual stick shift that's able to keep up with a very fast, powerful, high-revving 9,000 RPM motorsport engine that's shoehorned into the back of these things. Amazing. It's also interesting to note that with the 991 and 992 GT3 and the proliferation of that model in allowing manual and PDK examples, it's interesting to know the split between the two. And actually, again, for both generations, I'm told that it's roughly a 40% uptake in the manual gearbox. Another real positive is just how easy it is to use the stick shift here. There are a couple of technical innovations, we'll call them, that kind of help that process. We're going to explore that now. The first one is the auto blip on the downshift. It's just a little hand holding really to enable smooth downshifts, and therefore the car can stay stable. Comes into play automatically in sport mode, as it does with the 991. Another cool piece of gadgetry, the GT3 allows for flat shifting, and what that is, you still have to change gears normally as you would, clutch in, come through the gate, you keep accelerating with your right foot. It just gives you one less thing to do, which means you can shift that little bit quicker, which means the GT3 can keep its unbelievable velocity really slick through the gate, particularly where I'm at now in sport. You can really throw the shifter around. Oh, yes, I really do like that flat shift. And the auto blip makes me look far better than I actually am, that's for sure. The clutch is really easy to use. It's super light. It's quite a short shift. It doesn't have that rifle bolt feel of a 911R, definitely not. But it is nevertheless quite a short shift in comparison to, for example, the 7-speed manual that you'd find in the Carrera derivatives. It is quite light and fluid through the gate, so that's good. Again, just aids the ease of use when piloting this incredible machine. That's an overview of the 6-speed shift as it appears on paper. What I'm really interested in though, is there a tangible difference between them from here, where it matters, the driver's seat? Let's dive into the 991 and take a look. Right, okay then, so welcome to the interior of the 991, owned by my good friend Phil. Thank you, mate, for letting us drive this. So let's start it up. Ooh, settles to a nice bassy burble. Same engine, same gearbox. As I said, key difference though, and this is what I really want to dive into in this video, single mass flywheel on this car. You may remember when the 991.2 GT3 came out in touring specification, the big difference really that separated the touring from the 911R was the fact that the R you could spec a single mass flywheel, with the touring you couldn't. That's been carried over with the 992 touring to distinguish between this and of course that Halo 911R. What I will say, and the 992 touring has baby miles on the odometer. Phil's warmed this in a little bit more. It's 11,000 miles on the clock now. It tends to loosen things up. Oh, that immediately, that is a lovely shift. And this is exactly why I love doing this channel, and hopefully half the reason why you perhaps enjoy watching it is we like diving into these minuscule or small details that, as ever with these cars, tend to add up to a much kind of bigger picture. Let's pop Sport on, which of course isn't on a mode wheel at this stage. Oof, there's less, it feels like there's less travel there than there is in the touring. I know we're not comparing 991 v 992 because I've done that before in touring spec, but this car does feel so much narrower on the road, and it's all to do with that front axle. Really hear that engine behind, which possibly sounds a little bit more angry, guttural than the 992. The 992 is definitely a little bit more fluid through the gate, and again this has been worn in slightly, so you'd expect things to loosen up by now. And it's still sublime. We're talking to absolutely elite Porsche 911s here, but the 992 shift is definitely slightly more fluid than this, but that's a positive in favour of the 992. In favour of the 991, the shift has a bit more weight to it, and I like that. I would possibly argue that the 992 is superficially light, perhaps. Again, I'm in Sport, which auto blips just like the 992. Phil made a really good point that I think is worth passing on. Although some purists will want to do the heel and toe themselves, the reality is, us mere mortals, we can't shift quick enough. On the downshift, it's just a little kind of helping hand, really, just to keep the car smooth. Clutch pedal feel, as you'd expect on this car with the single mass flywheel, it's slightly lighter to depress the clutch compared to the dual mass on the 992. Not by a lot though, it has to be said, not by a lot at all. So there are the key differences between 991 and 992. Although on paper it's the same transmission, both 6-speed, both same ratios, both with a mechanical limited slip differential, there are certain differences with the character of both that separate them, and it's kind of pick your poison. I really like the weightiness of the shifter in the 991. I quite like the fluidity of the shift in the 992. And that concludes another video of 9works TV. Thank you as always for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on notifications. It means when I drop a video, you get to see it first. I'll see you in another video soon.